The MLB playoffs have officially started, so it's time for some year-end grades for the St. Louis Cardinals, or I should say awards this time. We'll also talk a little bit about the uncertainty of the RSNs and how that impacts the Cardinals cutting payroll. All this and more in this episode of Dealing the Cards. Sandy, Andrew, how it's a great day because the Astros are out of the playoffs and the Tigers are making
First
a
time
run.
in 8 years they
Oh
don't make it to
man.
the ALCS.
That felt so good. I'm so
lovely.
happy. I was a little worried when I picked the Tigers over the Astros that I was jinxing this, but go Detroit. I'm a Detroit fan for right now. But yeah, we wanted to kind of give some year-end awards. We do this every year on the podcast, and so we'll go through kind of like team MVP, who's worthy of an extension, underrated, all that kind of stuff. But before we jumped into that, I wanted to get your guys' takes on all this RSN uncertainty. So again, we know from the press conference Monday and just from some reporting coming into the end of the season press conference that it was likely the Cardinals were going to cut payroll. And so what does this mean for the St. Louis Cardinals? What does it mean for their offseason? What does it mean for their future? And then we also got the news today around baseball that the Bally bankruptcy and kind of the extent of that. And it was a little bit confusing. At first, it sounded like the Cardinals were officially dropped by them, so they for sure weren't going to get the money. And now it seems like they might have a chance to renegotiate with them. But then it sounds like if they do not secure a deal with Diamond Sports Group, then their rights will go to MLB and MLB will figure it out. It's confusing to me that the Cardinals have a path where they can control their own destiny with it. If they can't, I don't know what that means. I think long-term consumer-wise, like we're all really happy that blackouts will no longer be a thing and direct consumer is great. But what's been pointed out by a lot of people is in the immediate future, this is probably going to be a significant loss of finances for the Cardinals. They were due $70 million in a payment just for 2025 alone from Diamond Sportsbook or Diamond Sports Group. And so if that deal doesn't work out, that's $0. And I kind of doubt you're going to build a subscriber base that gets you to 70 million. And I know advertising and other stuff goes into it, but then I'm sure they'll have to make investments into how they do their own broadcasts and stuff like that too. So I'm sure that won't necessarily be cheap. So my question to you guys off the top, Sandy, if you want to jump in first, is does the payroll uncertainty, so like their desire to slash payroll, is that do they get a pass because of all this RSN uncertainty, or are you not buying that?
It's a lot of money that they just lost, and I get that. But at the same time, I don't know. The Cardinals run they they make a profit every year. They bring a ton of fans through the gates. Like this year in the press conference, DeWitt said they only brought in 2.85 million fans. Most teams would kill for that number. That for the Cardinals, that's like a devastating blow at the gate. They're still going to sell a ton of tickets next year. They're still going to bring in a ton of fans. And you know what? I think they're just compounding the issue by not investing in the team. If you want to make some money, you do have to put a good product on the field, especially if we're moving to this direct consumer model where all of a sudden now it's not coming with my other stuff. Like it's not part of my cable package and you're not getting that lump sum. Why would and I know it's not going to be this simple for a lot of consumers, but seriously, like if the team stinks, why am I going to spend X amount of dollars to just watch Cardinals games when I don't necessarily need that if they're not good? And with other stuff around today, like MLB at Bat, for example, you can follow along in your car. You can listen on the radio and it doesn't cost you anything to listen on KMOX, so I think it's going to be really tough for them to justify this. I'm kind of out on it. I think if you want people to do this, you need to invest in the team.
Andrew, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, they've been touting their like attendance numbers and similar to big market teams. And I understand that like it doesn't necessarily bode well for the profitability next year, but eventually you look at all these other teams like the Cubs, the Yankees, the Dodgers, those like really big market teams that have these packages. It makes them a lot more money in the long term to have their own rights being broadcast. And I don't know, like maybe you'll lose some this year, but for an organization that prides itself on never rebuilding, and they're really dancing around that word right now, like they really don't like that word, but that is what it is, right? All the reporters surrounding the team, everybody who has any sort of intel that isn't Mozeliak or DeWitt, or I guess Heim Bloom now, if he wants to protect his job, isn't going to say the word rebuild. Everyone else around the team is saying that it's a rebuild. And I get that it's a lot of money that they're potentially going to lose this year, and that's really unfortunate. But guess what? You're making a lot of money from elsewhere, and I think even if you run a slightly higher payroll compared to the profit that you're making, you're probably still going to make quite a bit of money. And it's just it's frustrating. I know it's a lot, but I don't know. It's not going to change. Like personally, I'm just going to use my MLB TV and my secret little tricks around the black.
VPN.
No, no, I don't know. What do you mean? I'm actually in Australia right now. Recording. It's like really early in the morning, actually. So yeah, that's how I'm watching all these playoff games on MLB TV. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's frustrating. I'm not going to pay for their package. Sorry, Cardinals. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah, and you're right, Sandy. To get people to pay for the package, you're going to have to put a good product on the field.
Yeah. I mean, I think again from the fan standpoint, though, it's huge that no longer blackouts. That should be the biggest thing for fans, and that anyone can access it. And I think there's potentially I think they've kind of alluded to this that obviously the lump sums they get from RSN is a great thing, but the fact that they're losing so many fans, current interest because they're just not tuning in because they're cord cutting, like it doesn't affect their bottom line, but long term it affects like the interest of a family and their kids, and like, are their kids going to grow up and want to watch Cardinal baseball and invest in the team? And so I do think there is, like, even if there's an immediate hit, long term, it's best to get it in as many hands as possible rather than just rely on the lump sums, because I think baseball in general is just losing interest. And so I don't know how much this is going to help that, but I think it certainly couldn't hurt. I say I'd give them a little bit of a pass for cutting payroll with this because it is like, I mean, if you take a $70 million hit in revenue from something like this, and to be fair, they've had time to kind of prepare for all scenarios, but like a year or two to prepare for a $70 million drop is, I mean, like, what do you do to prepare for that scenario other than just like, okay, we have to cut costs elsewhere? So I think it's more so like, I don't think I would support or say like they get a pass for cutting payroll significantly down. Like if they're getting down to 100 million or less or something like that, like, oh boy. But like if they do drop payroll by 20, 30 million this year, again, because it's that reset year, I'm not super upset about it because, I mean, what are they going to spend that money on? Another Lance Lynn or Kyle Gibson, like whatever. I'd rather have go into player development. And if they're going to reinvest it, hey, I'm saying more if they're going to reinvest it into the team later when they're actually competitive, then I care more about that. I think it's just like, it's not as simple as like, to me, that, oh, like just cut your bottom line more. I think they should be willing to do that because no one forces you to own a sports team. They've clearly made a huge profit. What did they buy the team for? 150 million, and it's worth multiple billions of dollars now. So it's like, you've made a lot, and you would think, especially with how things have gone recently, that you would want to get the goodwill of fans back, and even like for a year or two, like no one's asking them to do it for the rest of their lives, but to operate in the negative. But it's way easier to say when that's not my money, right? Like, and I know they make a ton of money, but like, it's just, I mean, there's people who probably look at middle-class families and say, well, you make a lot more money than me. So like, we can always play the comparison game. I know billionaires is different, so I'm not trying to defend that. But I just think that's, the RSN stuff's real. And so I get for 2025 why it impacts the bottom line, but it can't be a thing that lingers into 2026, 2027 and beyond to me. And I also think I'm only going to give them a pass to a certain extent. So we'll see. I also saw, I didn't get to read Gould's piece, but apparently like they have, like, think the money they were supposed to get from Diamond Sports is supposed to keep going up. So they haven't even hit like the most lucrative years of the deal yet. So like there's stuff like that where it's like they signed a $1.1 billion deal with Diamond Sports, and I can't remember how many years they're into it, but like that's a significant loss of like, you penned that in as we signed a contract, this money's coming in, and now it's just poof gone. And so I think that's fair to say, or to think about at least. But any other things you guys want to jump in with this? Or I think, Sandy, you had an idea of how they should implement this.
Well, look, I think the Cardinals this year, why not just go pay-per-view? Change my mind. I think it'd be awesome. For us, like, it'd be great if it was pay-per-view, like really cheap on per game basis. I would buy a package with every game. I would totally do that. And I think a lot of fans would, if you didn't make it like an appallingly high number. And I think you could make a lot of money. The Cardinals were definitely losing on the margins with this kind of deal with an RSN still. There are a lot of people in St. Louis. Those people want to watch Cardinals games. and getting it into a lot of people's hands, I think you could make a hefty profit back. And I think you might not make all that 70 million, but you could build a base, especially on a short-term thing like this. If it's like a couple bucks a game, I think a lot of people would be really, especially if the team is competitive. Now, if they're not good, it might be a lot harder, especially in September, if they're not playing competitive ball anymore.
Yeah.
But you could start to dig back into that, and maybe they'll be able to make 40 or 45 million back at least, which would be good. But like you said, they just cannot let this linger into the future. And I absolutely can see a world in which the Cardinals overachieve next year and decide they're not taking on money at the deadline because of this. Like, that would be ridiculous. Could you imagine if the Cardinals are competitive at the deadline, that maybe they're leading the division by some stroke of luck, and they say, hey, actually we can't. We're operating already really close to our bottom line this year. We're not going to take on additional money, or at least revealing that out loud and overplaying their hand, whatever the case. It cannot go past this year. And if it does, it's just ridiculous. And it's more platitudes the fans don't want to hear.
Yeah. Also, another reason why I'm rooting against the Tigers now that they've beaten the Astros, because their active payroll is like $18 million. And I do not want the DeWitts to go and be like, oh, look at the Tigers. They got in on $18 million. Let's just do that. So,
well, to be fair,
it's fun, but I don't want, for my own sake, please.
Their top 7 highest paid players are all not on the team. They're released, traded, or retired.
That's what they're going to say. They're going to be like, oh, if we sign a free agent, it's going to end up just like Javier Baez.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I remember the Javi deal. I remember criticizing it the day it happened.
Yep.
Terrible contract.
Agreed. Well, we'll jump into some end of season awards today. We've all kind of graded and kind of come up with our own. So some of them will overlap. A lot of them will be different too. But before we do, I just want to thank sponsor of our podcast, 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. Open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturdays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards. So they have the newest selections of packs, boxes, single card sets, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely go check out 314. Andrew just is there all the time now, getting more and more cards. And I still need to get down there. So I will at some point. Oh, that's a new Mason Win card. Man, I like the design at the bottom. It seems like cool. It looks like a classic card. So yeah, I mean, they tell us all the time that viewers come through and check out their stuff. And so I know some of you already go there. Let us know in the chat if you've been to 314. And maybe some cards you've gotten, whether it's some packs, boxes, or individual cards you've bought. But go check out 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles for all of your stuff. Cody just put in here, and I was like, that's a great point. We didn't do a best viewer award. What are we thinking? We should have thought that.
I have a few in mind for worst viewer award, but those are people on Twitter that we're going to talk about.
There's so many great viewers that if we just pick 3, yeah, it'd be bad. So
just all of them, but a couple of them on Twitter are not.
We do have some haters, that's for sure. Also, we did post a survey recently asking just for feedback. And so if you haven't seen that already, you can check that out in the community post in YouTube or on Twitter, X. Again, it's really helpful feedback for us. We've almost 100 responses so far. We'd love to have more, just that, oh gosh, yep, the chat knows. But just so we know what you guys are thinking about the podcast. There's been some really constructive feedback so far that we've really appreciated. And then also, I mean, just a lot of support from you guys. So we really appreciate it. But let's go into team MVPs, right? So I'll just start with mine, and then we can kind of go around the horn. I'll say my team MVP was Ryan Helsley. I think the fact that we played in so many close games, Cardinals this year, and the bullpen was lights out. And again, I don't think having they had an average closer in that spot. It's not like things would have been a mess, but the fact that he was so reliable with so many close games throughout the year, it's one of the main reasons the Cardinals are able to stay in the playoff race for so long this year. Ryan Helsley, if you just look at every player on the roster, is probably the best player at his job this year. And I think that just gives him most valuable player, right? Like, he locked down, 49 wins, right? And really should have gone to 50, but A, the team just wasn't good enough, and B, they didn't really throw him the last series because they're going to trade him. But love me some Ryan Helsley. It's going to be so hard to see him leave. But he just clearly is the most valuable player to me this year. I mean, there's some other guys that are definitely in the running, but the more I thought about it, it's like, it's weird to put a closer, but with how many close games they played this year, Ryan Helsley probably swung a lot of them. So that was my team MVP. What about you, Andrew?
My team MVP was Miles Mike. Oh, wait, no, not for my war draft. He had the most war out of all the players I drafted, though. So
that's
there
awful.
You go. That's just how bad my team was. No, my team MVP is Mason Wynn. You just look at all the metrics, most B WAR on the team, which I value more than F4, which is what we drafted. So thanks for that, Fangraphs. But yeah, Mason Wynn provided excellent defense, and everything that we got with the bat was kind of a bonus. He was top 10 among National League position players in B WAR and was second in defensive WAR among all defender or no National League defenders this year. Has a cannon of an arm, and his bat really developed more than I think we thought could have happened this season. Really excited for that. Plus, great leadoff hitting. Just all around. Also a two-way player. Thanks, Mo, for not doing that. But there you go. Mason Wynn.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Mason Wynn as my team MVP. Like Andrew said, he was almost a 5 WAR player according to B WAR, which is awesome. His OPS plus jumped 74 points from the small sample last year. That's awesome. That's a humongous leap for him. I think there's plenty of projectability with Wynn too. He's still really, really young. He played this season at age 22, and he doesn't turn 23 until the very start of next year. So there's plenty of room for this guy to turn into an actual star in St. Louis. I think you can bank on him right now more than you can bank on any of our other potential young stars to be that guy. He just I don't know, a word that gets thrown around a lot these days in sports discourse is aura. And I would argue Mason Wynn has aura. Like there's something about him. He's fun to watch. He's exciting. He plays the game in a way that is just contagious. So I love Mason Wynn. I'm really, really glad the Cardinals had him this year. It was awesome. And then one interesting thing about Helsley really quickly, Helsley recorded a save in 60% of the Cardinals wins this year. The Cardinals' previous record was Trevor Rosenthal, 2015, 48 saves. That was 48% of the games. That's a really high percentage. So when you think about how often he was impacting the game, it's a great pick, Josh.
Thank you.
I mean, Ryan Helsley, I would have picked him, but he failed to close out the most important game of the season, which is the one where the Cardinals and Mason Wynn shelled Shota Imanaga, and we ended up losing that game.
That was tough.
It would have been my favorite game of the year.
How many blown saves did Helsley have this year, though? Like 1 or 2?
Yeah, that was like one of like 4.
I think 2 or 3.
Yeah, it was a really low number. Whatever the case, it was wildly impressive.
But he made me very sad that day.
Yeah.
I was very upset.
Yeah. Do you think this is I'm trying to think, this is probably the weakest team MVP there's been in a long time, because there's been in a truly elite season. I mean, I guess Ryan Helsley's an elite closer season, but a closer being your best player is not the greatest thing in the world, if we're being honest.
I mean, I'll put it out there. If Contreras plays the whole season, he's a slam dunk MVP.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah. Because I debated him as my choice.
I thought about him too. And I wanted to give him his props. I can't pick him for the award though, because he missed over half the season.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's move into the best pitcher. We're not going to go. I don't think we should even call it a team Cy Young, because oh my gosh. Best starter. Yeah. Best starter on the team.
Split it into
Helsley would win the team Cy Young.
That's true. I'm going to go with Sonny Gray. I know that technically, ERA and all that, he wasn't necessarily the best starter this year, but I mean, this dude had an over 30% K raise. FIP was just above 3.0. This guy, for the most part, was missing bats left and right. If it wasn't really for the home run rate, this guy puts together another top season. I know the part that maybe almost swayed me off him not being the top starter is that stretch where they fell apart. He couldn't be a stopper. Yeah. And you would really think your top of the line starter to be that guy. Palante, again, results wise, end of the year, sure, it's probably him. But I think the actual best starter in your rotation, I still take Sonny Gray. I still want Sonny Gray on the mound for me game 1 of a series. And that's nothing against Andre Palante. And I just think Sonny Gray, as long as he keeps his stuff going in the next year, assuming he gets some positive regression in the home run rate, whatever team acquires him from the Cardinals, since he's probably going to get traded, is going to get a really good pitcher next year. And I think there's probably some positive or some regression coming for Andre Palante at some point, a little bit. I'm not saying a lot. But Sonny Gray is a guy that I just think has all the makeup of a frontline starter. But yeah, it was between those two guys for me. I think you guys went the other direction though.
We did.
Yeah, Sandy, I can't believe you would not go with Sonny Gray, but
I thought about it. But when I look at the overall numbers, and for me, it was that stretch in July that really swayed me. I needed Sonny Gray to come out there and be his best self. And, the team just, they weren't winning, and Sonny Gray wasn't pitching well. And those two things went together this year, I think, for the Cardinals. And I think that's really important. Also for Palante, I think there's regression coming, but I think it's actually positive regression for Andre Palante in the future. The expected stats say that he should be better than he was this year. His expected ERA was in the 75th percentile at 3.39. His actual ERA was 3.78. He had a 98th percentile ground ball rate, 62%. So almost nobody in all of baseball was better at generating ground balls. Only 3.3% of balls were barreled against him, which is top 2% in all of baseball. He limited hard hit contact. He was really, really good this year. And what I love so much about Palante, there's projectability for next year. I think he's absolutely earned a spot in the rotation. I think that should be cemented right now. And I don't think there's any argument about the fact that Andre Palante is going to be not just in the rotation, but probably in the top half of the rotation next year. And the Cardinals needed that. I don't know how much worse off we'd be headed into next year without an Andre Palante on the roster.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, anything to add to that?
I mean, you look at his baseball reference page, which is apparently in Spanish because I'm in Mexico now to watch the playoffs. But
oh my gosh!
So anyway,
get it in Australian.
His ERA as a starter was 3.56. Obviously, those 10 relief innings early in the year really put a dent in his ERA, and we're not counting that. This is the best starter category, and it was considerably lower than Sonny Gray. And I don't really think I can give best starter to a guy that we expected to limit the home run ball and had the same home run rate as Lance Lynn. I just don't think that's necessarily fair, especially when Palante did give you less volume, but that's because he was in AAA for the first 2 months of the year trying to make his way back as a starter. And as he was coming back, obviously this isn't Michael McGreevy who gave you 3 starts. This is someone who gave you 20 starts and was really someone that put the team on his back when they needed another starter, right? This could have gone really badly. You've seen in years past where they bring up a guy from AAA who's not ready, like Johan Oviedo or Daniel Ponce Leon. Yeah. And it just
Ponce, oh my goodness.
Jake Woodford, if you want to go from last year, Drew Rom, guys that were just not ready necessarily, but he really kept the team in contention. And every time he would come and start, when he was first announced as the next starter in the rotation, I was like, oh no, it's Palante. It's going to be bad. And every time he proved me wrong. So maybe I just need to be down on guys like that. Now Palante is going to be terrible next year. So
I did think there's some interesting points in the chat about what Palante or other starters working with Heim will continue to essentially evolve their game. And depending who you talk to, there's people who've already kind of given credit to Heim for a Quinn Matthews type of stuff. And because he's not just been studying and saying nothing. There's been some things they've made quick changes on already because you could just do that without even the technology. And so I do wonder maybe if there's been some of that with Palante this year or Michael McGreevy or some of these guys that took some steps forward. But yeah, it's Andre Palante is a worthy best starter award. I think our best reliever is all pretty clear to us. Ryan Elsley. I know Sandy wanted to glaze John King a little bit.
Is it not Chris Roycroft? Actually, I had Jacob Bastiakovich because he's a two-way player.
That's a terrible answer.
He didn't give up a single run.
I guess that's a way to put it. I think we're going to stick with Ryan Helsley, though.
Neither did Ryan Ludis.
Yeah, we're not doing that. But definitely Ryan Helsley.
He had a good year.
Okay, we're moving on. And then best rookie, again, that was pretty easy. Mason went across the board here. But there were some standouts, right? Like McDreamy and I guess that's really the other one. I would
love to glaze McDreamy real quick.
We'll get to that. We'll get to some McDreamy.
It's not Jose Fermin as best rookie?
Is he technically even a rookie anymore?
I think he has rookie status because he played 10 games last year.
Oh my gosh. I think Kyle Leahy still has rookie status.
Wow. That's yep. Anyways, well, let's those two are easy. We kind of already talked about them. But best prospect, I think that's one that is really interesting. And there was a clear, obviously, the easy answer. Andrew and I kind of took the easy answer here. Andrew, do you want to share your best prospect of the year?
Yeah, we went with Quinn Matthews, minor league pitcher of the year. Went up from single A to triple A in all but one season. Had a little bit of stumbles in triple A, but overall exceeded all expectations. Second round pick, I think. You can correct me on that. I'm not a huge prospect
Fourth
expert.
round pick.
Fourth round pick. Okay.
Yeah.
And he became a top 100 prospect within a year, and that's great to see. Thanks, Heim, for helping us with that. I'll credit him for that, even though I don't even know if that was him. Maybe Mo did that, but he's not getting the credit this time. So, yeah, excited for him. Hopefully, he'll come up next year, and hey, maybe he'll be our Paul Skeens. Talk yourself.
Yeah, I'm not going to put Quinn Matthews on Paul Skeens level. I'm not even going to touch that. But yeah, I put Quinn Matthews too. Obviously, he just swept best prospect of the year for minor league baseball, best pitcher in the minor leagues this year. Yeah. Again, I think him and Brandon Pfaadt are the only minor league pitchers since 2013 or 2012 to have over 200 strikeouts in a minor league season. I mean, he just looks great. He came in as a guy where you're hoping maybe could be a rubber arm number 5 for you when he's drafted, but maybe will never even make the show, like a lot of prospects. And now he's one of the best pitching prospects, one of the best prospects in all of baseball, honestly. And has got the major swing and miss, front of the rotation upside. Again, I'm not going to put him in as some kind of like we should be seeing he's the next Corbin Burns or anything, but like in Sunny, like a number, like a really good number 2. I think that's got to be in Quinn Matthews' range of outcomes here. And it's a huge development for a team that just hasn't had young pitching in a while. And so we could talk about some other young pitching prospects that are coming up, but Quinn Matthews is clearly the star of the show here.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthews went through all 4 levels this year. That doesn't just happen. And it's not like the Cardinals had him jump multiple levels at a time. He spent time at each one, dominated, moved up to the next one. If you just look at the raw numbers, the end of the year in AAA wasn't fantastic. But there's more there than meets the eye, and he has a great track record of success now. I think he has every opportunity to be a number 1 at the big league level because he has what not every pitcher like him has. You look at Tink Hence, who has incredible stuff, but he does not have the durability. Quinn Matthews threw 156 pitches in a college game. Like, this guy can go out there and he has the endurance to pitch for a long time. He can go out there and turn in 7 or 8 inning performances, and that's what it takes to be a number 1.
Yeah.
So I'm all in on him. He's awesome.
I loved his comments at the end of the year. I think Derek Gould caught him that basically he was like the bad taste that he had in AAA. He's going to keep that with him in the offseason. It's going to motivate him. It's the thing he's going to remember the most from this year, and it's going to help him get better. And I just love that mentality of he's hungry to prove people. Like, I mean, most people are believers in him, but he's hungry to keep surprising people. And I believe, and some people just say that, but he seems like a guy who embodies that. So, but I know you picked a different prospect, partially because you want to be like,
I did.
Yeah.
So I went with JJ Weatherholt. As much as we love Quinn Matthews, JJ Weatherholt is the consensus top prospect in the organization.
Yes.
The Cardinals were very, very lucky to get him 7th overall. A lot of people even on draft, even moments before Cleveland selected Travis Bazzana, they thought there was a decent chance that JJ Weatherholt was going to be the number 1 overall pick. Now, if you know Kareem, you knew that wasn't going to happen. You knew the Cardinals were getting him 7th, and we did. He slid to us. We got him. And his first taste of the, first couple weeks weren't awesome. And then he turned it on. And then during the playoff chase, he was awesome in the minors. He ended up having a really, really strong year. The numbers are exciting. He's literally allergic to making soft contact. He was amazing. He was hitting the ball hard. He hits it to all fields. He's a good defender. He might even be a better defender than scouts and evaluators thought. His first taste of professional action was really positive there. There's so much to love about him. The Cardinals could be pretty aggressive with him. He's very, very advanced coming out of West Virginia after his junior season. There's a real chance that we're talking about him as a contributor on the 2026 team. So there's so much to love about him. I think next year he could jump to within baseball's top 10 prospects. He is a true blue chipper.
Love it. Big JJ Weatherholt fans over here. So you can go check out our clip from way back when. So let's go to most underrated. Sandy, you just want to go ahead and move right into that. Who is your most underrated?
Yeah, I would love
Cardinal?
to. The most underrated Cardinal, maybe the most underrated player in the entire world. My king, John King. Have to put that out there. John King, as I've said many, many times, had a great year. And as I've said many, many times, the doubters continued to doubt for actually a long time into the year. I want it to be known that now, in 2 seasons with St. Louis, across 78.2 innings, King has a 2.52 ERA. Okay? He's been legit. He's been awesome. John King generates a ton of ground balls. He gets out of jams. He was up in big situations, and he's somebody that like he wasn't even going to make the opening day roster, according to most people. And he ended up, in my opinion, being one of the 3 or 4 best relievers on this team. It's hard to explain why it works for him. His arsenal isn't overpowering. He doesn't strike everybody out, but he gets the job done. It's kind of like a JoJo Romero at his peak last year type thing. That's who John King was this year. He was reliable. He gave the Cardinals a ton of volume for a reliever. And I'm excited to see him actually like sharpied in to the roster next year. He should be in the bullpen. There's no more argument. He was one of their top options. I'm really excited about the season he had. And, I can't wait to see him in the future.
Yep, I was a big doubter of John King.
You were.
I wanted him DFA in the offseason, so I was very wrong. Andrew, who's your most underrated Cardinal?
Might not be a popular pick, but my most underrated Cardinal is Lance Lynn, and that's probably why I picked him. Because it just seems like everyone wrote him off during the season, but he gave you really competitive starts. Maybe not necessarily the volume that you wanted, but he put up a 3.84 ERA in 23 starts, and he really just he did his job. Like, he gave the Cardinals a chance to win. Obviously, looking back on it, kind of wish the Cardinals had not signed Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson and invested more in their farm system, but they did. It was kind of a move to get them back into contention this year, which, I mean, Lynn didn't necessarily give you the volume, but he helped you in a lot of different ways by stabilizing the rotation. And he lowered his ERA from 5.73 last year to 3.84. And we were thinking like he was going to just be absolutely terrible, like a Michaelis type pitcher, just eating innings and nothing else. He dropped his home run rate quite a bit. It was 2.2 last year. It was 1.2 this year. And yeah, the metrics might not have been pretty, but he did what he needed to do. And if you take out that one start in Washington where he gave up like 10 runs in like 2 innings because the Cardinals were just short on pitching and needed him to run out there, it's a lot better, right? Like, he probably has an argument for best starter if that start is just like a normal Lance Lynn start, like 6 runs, 3 innings, right? Like, instead it was just horrible. And like, even when he was hurt, he was giving you decent starts, decent amount of length. And yeah, appreciate Lance Lynn, but seems like the rest of the fans didn't really care for him this year. So that's why he's my most underrated.
Yeah, that's a good pick. So my most underrated pick was going to be Brendan Donovan, but I have decided to make a late change to the lineup here. My most underrated Cardinal of 2024 is Ollie Marmol.
It's a good take. I thought it was going to be like Tommy Pham or something dumb like that.
No, it's Ollie. I thought of this before Andrew made the point of Cardinal fans don't like with his lane, but something someone said earlier, I was like, maybe Ollie should be underrated. I just think most people think he's a major problem and a major detriment to the team, and that he sucks and that everything he does is wrong. And I think he's a good manager. I'm not trying to say he's elite. I'm not trying to say he's great. I'm talking about most underrated. So like where he's rated, he is underrated what he should be. I'm gonna say Ollie.
I mean, the number of comments we got on our thing, it was like almost good for like just engagement baiting on Twitter, where it's like,
but that's not what we're trying to do.
Here. No, we're not. But like,
yeah. So
the number of people who commented on our thing, it was like just pure, like, it was great engagement bait, but it was also genuine. Putting Ollie in A tier.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I'm gonna say, like, I know I think Petcoa maybe had the Cardinals. One of the projection systems had the Cardinals winning like 85 games this year, but most of them had them projected like the high 70s and stuff like that, and the Cardinals outperformed that. Again, like, objectively, if I told you the Cardinals were going to have a bad offense this year, and I mean like really bad, and was historically bad for the scoring position and a mediocre rotation, but they had a good bullpen, I don't think any of us are telling you or are going to say they're close to the playoff team. If you even just told me they had a bad offense and none of the other stuff, and even if you told me they had a good rotation, I'd probably be like, I don't know if it's enough. And I think he navigated it well. I think it was on Bernie's podcast recently that he had talked about how someone removed from like the Cardinals, they're not covering the Cardinals, they're not in the organization, they're somewhere else in baseball, told them they think Ollie's the best manager in baseball at managing a bullpen. And it's like, go tell Cardinal Twitter that, because they will not agree. Because if he makes the right decision and it goes poorly, then they blow up on him about it. And if he makes the wrong decision and it goes right, they'll blow up on it. Like, it just doesn't feel like Ollie can do anything that anyone will accept as a good move. So that's why I say he's underrated, because I think he's he's a good manager. And I'm actually like, I mean, we've talked about it. I was interested in the idea of like an Albert Pujols or something, but partially because it's stinking Albert Pujols. Like, there's a lot of managers I'd fire for Albert. But now that they're keeping him around, I'm interested to see how Ollie does with an actual young team that he can invest in. I know that some young players around here haven't necessarily worked out, but like we've talked about how at the minor league level, player development is so thin, and the coaching and preparing the players to the next level, that it's like that can't all just be put on Ollie from that standpoint. I think the organizational issues are bigger than him. I don't think Mike Schilt does much more with this team. And I honestly think if Ollie was in San Diego, that team's probably pretty similar. I'm not saying they'd be as good, but I like Ollie. I think he's underrated. He's my most underrated Cardinal. So hate me all you want, guys. I can't wait for the graphic to be posted and people think,
Yeah.
Weird. But also, like, I mean,
too, if I thought we were doing other people, but I guess we're like,
well, we put other people for other stuff. I'll say, like, I know some people said, like, if we had a different manager, this team wins 5 to 10 more games. I do not believe that, because
it's not true.
Like, are you saying like if they win 10 more games that a new manager is worth the same as Shohei Ohtani, a 10 WAR player? Like, I think a manager maybe impacts a couple games here or there.
No, I mean, if you're talking about people that they should have brought in, then
yeah, it's different. I just don't think it was like a disaster the way he managed the team. I think the team was like, we can't all say the team wasn't talented enough to make the playoffs and then also say it's Ollie's fault they didn't make the playoffs. But anyways, I'm just gonna put Ollie on there. I know people are gonna hate us for it, or hate me for it. Spark plug. I went Mason Wynn. Again, I just think it's your point, Sandy. Aura. I think the way he plays the game, I think there's a lot of big moments this year. I think the fact that he was a consistent leadoff hitter for him, even though he wasn't like elite at it, but he was consistent, someone they could poach there, or like not poach there, but expect to be there every day. The plays he'd make at shortstop. I just think he was kind of the spark plug this year. Andrew, who is your spark plug?
I'm actually changing mine to Michael Ciani, because Michael Ciani stepped up and filled the role in center field when he was like plan D. Tommy Edman was hurt, and he'll pop off now with the Dodgers, sadly, or not sadly, depending on who you're rooting for in the playoffs. And then Dylan Carlson was the next answer, and then he got destroyed by Jordan Walker in the last spring training game. And then Victor Scott was that answer, and then he was not great in his first time. And then Michael Ciani took over, and he kind of didn't give up the job for the rest of the season. I guess they thought he played good enough. Offensively, probably not, but from a defensive standpoint, going to be a top contender for the Gold Glove in center field. And he was a guy in spring training. I was like, who is this guy? I probably couldn't pronounce his name if you asked me to say it. So maybe some other people couldn't pronounce his name either. But
Sinisi.
Yeah. So, man.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Hopefully he's not on the roster next year, but he was great for this year as a spark plug.
It's fair.
Oh, maybe next year is like a pinch runner defensive replacement, but not a starter.
You don't want him to be the guy, though, in center field. Absolutely. I went with one that I don't know if you'll agree with me before I tell a little story. So here's the deal. On May 11th, I tweeted out that the Cardinals were dead. The 2024 Cardinals were dead in the water. Here's kind of what happened going into that. So they lost, like 8 of 9 games to open up May. Wilson Contreras went down. The offense was already among the worst in baseball. It was set to get worse. They dropped the first 2 games of the series to Milwaukee. And then, they went nuclear after that. They went 33-18 over their next 51 games. They started by salvaging a game in Milwaukee to avoid a 4-game sweep. The first time they beat
Milwaukee is the spark plug because he got ejected.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's it. Or maybe it's Alec Burleson, okay, who over that stretch, over those 51 games where the Cardinals were 13 games above 500, he hit 297 with a 332 on base, slugged over 500 for an 834 OPS. He was one of the team's offensive MVPs, and he did it all with some bad batted ball luck. Burley still only had a 280 BABIP. There was room for even more. Alec Burleson was awesome. When Alec Burleson was at his best, the team was at their best. And I know that applies for a lot of guys, but he was right in the middle of it. It felt like he got hot over those summer months. Other people started to play better. They had a great June. They started July off well. And then obviously the team ran out of gas. And you could tell by the end of the year when Alec Burleson in particular was looking extra tired, the team was not winning games. They were not playing well offensively. Things fell apart. That was the time when your young guys like Burleson and Wynn in particular play more games they've ever played in their entire career. You expect those veterans like Goldie and Arenado, who we'll get to later, to sort of pick up the slack. Yeah. That didn't happen this year, but it's not on Burley and Wynn, who I see as the big spark plugs. And I'll go with Burley for my award.
Yeah, I like it. Well, let's move on to our extension candidates. We've got a couple more coming through. Also, if you're watching right now and it's the first time tuning in, we'd love if you subscribe and like the episode as well. It helps us out a ton. My extension candidates can be Brendan Donovan. I just think at this point he's entering arbitration. I think he's a guy clearly is a leader in a big part of your club. He's been the most consistent of the young bats so far when you talk about year to year. Like, again, he was like a 120 something WRC plus, and he was like 118 and ascending last year. And then he's like 114, 115 this year. When you saw a major drop off from Gorman, you saw a major drop off from Walker. Newt Bars hurt a lot. I think Donovan, the fact that he can play all over the field, he's a leader in the clubhouse. I think you get him on a decent deal too. So it's not like giving him some crazy Julio Rodriguez extension. I think Brendan Donovan needs to stay for a long time in St. Louis. He could be a bridge player where he's in the retool years, but also part of the winning club. Andrew, who are you thinking?
My extension candidate is Mason Wynn. You extend those rookies while you can. He could just become a superstar player next year. He could also flame out like we've seen a lot of other guys doing, but I'm inclined to believe that if they revamp player development, that's probably not going to happen with Mason Wynn. But yeah, I don't know who else. Like, I'm not really sold on a lot of these extensions right now. Last year, we were high on a lot of these young guys.
That's fair.
But I think my tone on extensions is kind of soured a little bit with a lot of these guys. I had to pick somebody for this one, but like I'm not really sold on the idea of a lot of this. I feel like Mason Wynn could take a step back next year, and you could maybe extend him for less. But I guess Sandy wants to extend someone who's like super cold right now, which also I think is a good idea. But I think you have to be very careful right now because you could sign a really bad extension that could end really poorly for your team. Kind of like the DeYoung or Carpenter extensions. But yeah, I feel like the safest bet is probably Mason Wynn. He has a really high floor because at the very least, he's a really good defender. And like even if the bat takes a step back, he's still going to be very productive for you next year. So I'm going to go with Mason Wynn, but also I'm not really sure about whether or not I would actually go about doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fair. Like you said, Andrew kind of spoiled it just a bit here, but I'm going to go with someone who had a colder year. I'm going to go with Jordan Walker. And the reasoning here is I think there's a ton of talent in Jordan Walker still. I'm betting on that upside. I think there's a reason he was at one point. I love that, Cody. I think there's a reason at one point Walker ranked as the top prospect in all of baseball. Evaluators love him. There is too much talent there for him to not play at least a slightly above average offensively. And I think he's got way more than that in him. I think he's going to be legit next year. I'm all in on giving Jordan Walker an extension now because I think it'd come really, really cheap. I think if you put money in front of Jordan Walker's camp, they're going to have trouble rejecting it right now. Maybe because he's so young and because there's so much control left, they say, let's wait. Let's talk to you again in 2 years. But there's every chance that 2 years from now, if he plays like this for 2 more years, like it'd be really bad. You know, I could see in 2026, if it's like this again, the Cardinals being like, there's not really a spot for you on this team, you know? And so I think something like this right now, you bet on that upside, you could get him so much cheaper. So I would love to see that. I think it could be a home run play. It's high risk, high reward, but
yeah, true.
The All-Star series is terrible. I don't like it. It's like,
I'm mad I didn't keep my Royals pick. I was like, I couldn't send 2 AL Central teams through. But, oh well.
My Royals Dodgers World Series is still intact. That wasn't my prediction, but I want that to happen.
He does want that. It would be great for you.
I just want to say one more thing before we leave this. I'm so sorry. I was trying to pull up the number, but listen to this. Mason Wynn's season this year is almost identical to Dansby Swanson's 2023 All-Star season with the Cubs. It's like the exact same thing. Slightly above league average offensively, really, really good defense. He had a slightly higher WAR as well. So, and we're getting it for free, and the Cubs are paying millions of dollars to Dansby. So I just want to put that
over 20 million a year. That's
way too much.
So, okay. So I have to admit, my biggest surprise is definitely Michael McDreamy. I was such a hater. I was like, this guy is not good enough. What a wasted first round pick. He's not even good enough for triple. He's not performing at AAA. So why on earth would he ever be a starter? And when he got the spot started, I was like, oh boy, here we go. This will be interesting. And McDreamy's been awesome, and he should be in the rotation next year to see what he has. And I was so wrong on Michael McDreamy. So Sandy was a stand for so long, and I have to cede to Sandy there that Michael McDreamy was a surprise. He was not a surprise to Sandy, but he was a surprise to me.
Biggest known quantity for me. So, you know.
You have a lot of known quantities, though.
It's true. Sometimes I'm wrong. I'll admit that. When I'm wrong, I'm really wrong. But when they hit, they go crazy.
All right, Andrew, who's your most surprising?
My most surprising was Katie Wu. Her entire article was a huge surprise to me. I was like, oh, wow, this organization is rotting. No. For like a actual surprise that was good, let's go with Ryan Fernandez, because I initially had
good.
But because I never heard of Ryan Fernandez, and he actually turned out to be like a top 3 reliever in the bullpen. So let's go with him. Rule 5 picks don't tend to really be all that impactful, but he was probably one of the more valuable ones.
Yeah, it's a great pick.
I've ever been. So
yeah,
it's awesome. I termed this pleasant surprise, so not necessarily biggest surprise for me, but Pedro Pages. Pedro Pages was fun this year. He played really, really good defense for the Cardinals. He came in and kind of stabilized things when it looked like there was trouble with Herrera. When Contreras was injured, Pages was there. And it was impressive for him to be able to come up almost straight from Double-A and be able to slot in right away at the big league level. Also had a couple big hits, a couple exciting moments. What's going on?
The Mets just scored. They have runners at first and third with 1 out, and the Brewers are so fraudulent.
That's big news. It would be a party on Twitter later.
Yeah, true.
But back to what I was saying, Pages had some big hits, especially against the Cubs. A couple exciting moments, which we really appreciate. In a season where you don't make the playoffs, what do you have except for exciting moments, right? He provided those. Very excited to have him in the fold still. And I think there's real trade value here. I think he's somebody that the Cardinals wasn't really on their radar, and now it's a clear area of surplus. They have 3 startable catchers.
Yeah. It's weird because it's like I was surprised by Pages, but man, Ivan Herrera should have been playing.
Absolutely.
He was on pace for over 5 WAR and 600 plate appearances. So like that dude, I don't know how he's not playing. So ridiculous. So it's like it's weird. Anyways, we'll move on. Most disappointing this year, I got to go with Jordan Walker. You could easily make a case for the veterans and all that stuff, but like I thought Jordan was going to take a big step this year and become like a legit dude. We saw that in the second half last year. Again, ever since, or not even second half, when he came up June 1, the rest of the year, he was 20% above league average. And then he was like 35% above league average the last month and a half. The defense seemed like it had been, or like we came into the season thinking it was going to be somewhat improved, and it was in some ways, but the bat just, man, was not good enough. And it's frustrating, right? He was a top 3 prospect in all of baseball, and some people had him number 1 overall. And I know like Dylan Carlson got hyped by this organization, but like Walker was a different level of prospect, and it didn't work. And I'm really disappointed by that. So Jordan Walker is my most disappointing. Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, my most disappointing is Nolan Gorman. He took a huge step forward last year.
Yeah.
Showed 35 plus home run potential. And I think he still has that. He still has the power in him, but that's just about all he's got left. He's basically Chris Davis in all of the worst ways possible. And good thing the Cardinals aren't paying him a ton. And he got sent down to AAA to work things out, and he was hitting like 199 in AAA last I checked. So yeah, not good for Nolan Gorman this year. Really disappointing. Expected really big things from him. I took him in the WAR draft. Thanks, Nolan, for giving me absolutely nothing in that. But yeah, I'm a little bit upset that I lost that. But upset that I lost it in the way that I did. I think I only got 5 WAR, which is less than like a lot of players. But yeah. Oh, thanks, Pete Alonso. You deserve a nice takedown for grinding into a double play. Yeah, but Nolan Gorman defense also slipped. Just overall, really disappointing player. Just not what we expected. Expected him to be like batting third. Instead, he spent most of his time batting like seventh or eighth, and then not batting at all. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, this was one of the hardest ones to pick because there are a lot of options on this team.
Yeah.
Dylan Carlson was available. Thought about him just because of how bad he was and how few opportunities. Thought about Gorman because of the gigantic step back he took. But I went with Walker too. And it's because I thought he was going to be the team's best hitter, and I kind of figured if Goldie and Arenado continue to slip like they did last year, it should be okay because Jordan Walker has star potential and he wasn't that guy this year. It was really, really hard to watch at times. Seeing him in AAA and then not finding success in AAA for weeks on end was also really, really hard to see. I think it was a hard year for him in every way. I'm sure it's been tough to deal with this sudden obstacle in a career that, I mean, he ascended so fast. If you think about how quickly Jordan Walker reached the big league level, he flew through the minors, dominated every level he was at, and then gets here, can't get it done. Also can't get it done in AAA all of a sudden now. Like, what's going on? So he needs to reset this offseason. Obviously, we still believe in him long term. There's way too much talent. Like you said, he's a different level of prospect than other guys who have been through this organization. But it was just a disappointing year. Now, that being said, I still want to see him extended because I believe in him. And I think hopefully in 2028, when Jordan Walker has 4 years of control left at, $11 million a year, the Cardinals look back on this year and they're like, wow, this is really great in the long run for us. So, that's what I'd like to see. Not sure it'll happen, but
yeah. Oh man. Well, I think we're going to finish out with who's to blame and honorable for most disappointing, or who's to blame from Cody in the chat, Turner Ward. That would have been a good pick.
ooh, that's good.
So feel free to change that if you want to, but I will go with my who's to blame for the mess of the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm going to go with the DeWitts. I think like Mo has alluded to, the Athletic piece has alluded to, just our piece we have the meets. There's just their lack of investment in the team. And I feel like you listen to them at the press conference and man, they just feel out of touch. I mean, they're asked about what's going to draw fans back, and DeWitt the third is like, well, we could have some cool giveaways and we could work on the fan experience and all this kind of stuff. I'm doing my Mo voice for Bill DeWitt the third, but like, I just think they don't get it. They don't get that the fans, like the fact that they kept the same leadership in place for the most part, and basically moved Gersh to basically pushing Gersh out, and Mo will retire next year. It's like they're just tone deaf to what's going on. And it's weird because I know they know that's how fans feel, but they just won't acknowledge that they need things to be different. Or they did acknowledge things to be different, but the way they're going about it, it's just like why this way? So, and it's also disappointing too, and to blame because they, like, especially DeWitt Jr. used to not be like this, right? He was the one who got the Cardinals back to being a cutting edge organization, top of baseball. And in the words of Chaim Bloom, the Cardinals rested on their morals for years, and they got beat bad. And I mean, I'm hopeful that the DeWitts are like this, like the Bloom hiring and some of the stuff is moving toward the right direction. But man, it's just really disappointing to see where the state of the organization's gotten to. And for them, like that quote when they fired Mike Matheny, it's like, well, 500, like even just winning baseball here isn't good enough. And now they're in a state like they are now. It's quite the decline. So DeWitt's my most disappointing. Andrew, how about you, man?
I'm going to blame for this season, just for this season, not for the mess of the organization, just for how bad the Cardinals were this season, not making the playoffs. I'm going to blame Goldschmidt and Arenado.
Yeah.
Right. Because I've said it before, and I'll get some flack for saying it again. Mo built the roster. He built it the way he wanted to build it. Should he have spent more money on player development? Yeah, sure, whatever. That's going to happen now. But he wanted one last year, spending exclusively just for the major league roster, and he did a pretty good job given what he knew he had. Right, like the pieces he brought in were very good. I can't really blame Mo for that. Can I blame the DeWitts a little bit for maybe like, oh yeah, you should go out, maybe sign the greatest player of all time who's available for just money? Yeah, sure. But like those things that probably wouldn't have happened even if they had offered the money and there were other guys, other starters, but like you sign a Aaron Nola or a Yamamoto or a Imanaga or a trade for Glass now, and nothing's really different, right? You're still going to miss the playoffs. The one thing that you could change that you can't, or the one thing that could have changed that the owners or the front office can't change is the two Hall of Famers falling off a cliff and just being bad, right?
Yeah.
Like below league average for most of the year. And I pin it on them for this season, right? Like it's tough. I enjoyed watching them play in their primes on the Cardinals for 3 years, but it didn't seem to have a good ending. And if they had played to their like 2022 standards, this team might win like 95 games. If they played to their 2023 standards, this team probably contends for the Central, probably wins the Central, and is probably losing the Mets right now in the wild card series because that's whatever. But either way, they're the reason this team failed this year. And like it wasn't Lance Lynn, it wasn't Sonny Gray, it wasn't Kyle Gibson. They all did exactly what they were brought in to do. It was the guys that were already on the team, and no one is more to blame than the two that are being paid to do that, and they didn't do it. So it's tough.
Yeah, I think if I was going to pick a player, I would have gone with that. But I'm going to pick Andrew. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. For jinxing stuff occasionally, like Imanaga. Thank you very much. But no, I'm going to go with the front office.
We did not miss the playoffs because of Imanaga.
I know.
I'll just say that was because of Ryan Helsley.
We missed the playoffs because of the front office. I know people want to hear me say it's specifically Mo. I'll be honest. I'm just going to say it's a collective issue. I can't be in the rooms with them, so I don't know how the meetings go. I wish I had, I wish I could be a fly on the wall just to watch how Mo interacts with DeWitt, especially. I think the buck stops with DeWitt, and I think you're right to say that, Josh. I really do wonder, did Mo ever tell DeWitt, hey, we need to spend more in player development. Hey, we need to overhaul this. Hey, we need a pitching lab. And I wonder if DeWitt just said no, if he thought those were ways he could save on the margins. Whatever the case, though, as a collective unit, ownership and the front office let this team down. And most importantly, they let the fans down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to blame fans for not being at the ballpark. And I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to specifically blame ownership for criticizing fans for not going to the ballpark. Saying that it's our fault is ridiculous. I took that personally. I'll say when DeWitt said something about the fans not being there and not supporting the team, I thought that was ridiculous. And I think it's something we called out at the moment, but I just want to bring attention to it again because I'm still upset about it. I thought it was completely unfair. The fan experience at Busch Stadium this year was not great. Just beyond the fact that there's a losing club on the team, it's hard to get to Cardinals games. It's expensive. Concessions are pricey. Like, it's an expensive night. And if you're going to go there just to watch a team that they're not putting everything into, that's frustrating. So I think it's totally on them. And I think this team is going to I think they're going to be around 500 next year, probably a little under. Like, I think a reasonable win total is upper 70s if they go full youth movement. And I think it's going to be the same thing again next year. And I'm going to be happy to call them out again when it comes to that. So the buck stops with DeWitt. It stops with the higher ups like Mo. It's frustrating. I'll blame them before I blame players, a manager, or fans.
Yeah, and I think even something that's interesting is like Joseph pointed out, Wu suggested that the money allocation was directed to the majors, not the minors. And that was a Mo decision. But like a couple of threads there, right? Like one, it's been talked about pretty, like DeWitt is not an owner who just kind of stays away from baseball operations and they tell him what they do. And he's like, cool. He like wants to be involved and he's intimately involved in the kind of moves they make. And so it's like, he can say that the money is going toward, like, they can do whatever they want with it. But at the same time, it's like, clearly he wanted to go after, he was approving of the Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson and stuff like that, which required money toward the major league club to make that kind of stuff happen. And so I think he's probably supportive too of resting on their morals, minor league development wise. And then to Andrew's point, like, even though I agree Goldie and Otto should have stepped up this year, like if their player development was better, then you probably have a Gorm step up. You probably have a Walker step up. You probably have some of these young guys step up and they're just continuously regressing. Or maybe Carlson is like a pretty decent player for them right now and he's gone, or O'Neill's with them and he's good. Like there's just a lot of these guys that kind of fell off and are gone. And you have to look at player development where they basically, Andrew, you alluded to this recently, they lucked into acquiring 2 Hall of Famers and it kind of sustained their success for a longer period of time than what it should have. And without those two guys the last few years performing the way they do, this club probably craters, and it's just really frustrating. So I think all of us are right? Like you can blame Goldie Arenado, you can blame DeWitts, you can blame Mo. It's the mess of the season the Cardinals had this year, which is super unfortunate. So those are our picks.
We blame Basketball Man.
Yachty.
For not showing up.
Yeah, I don't know how much that would have helped, but
I don't think
or hurt. But you never know. So glad Bloom's here. Glad some stuff's changing. Hopefully next year's end of the season rewards were more so like, man, there's a lot of MVPs to pick from. There's a lot of like best prospects to pick from instead of with our most disappointing who's to blame columns. We had plenty of options for. So again, appreciate the support and appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll go live again on Sunday, and hopefully by then we've got some more tidbits about the Cardinals offseason to talk through. Really excited about some changes coming to St. Louis. It'll be an interesting offseason, probably a hard offseason in some ways, but we're excited to journey with you all in it. So continue to stick in to Deal in the Cards, tune in with us. Really appreciate it. Like and subscribe, helps the channel a ton. We'll see you next time. Thanks to Wit.